Admittedly, looking at this picture, one would have a hard time believing that I am a man that gets excited about the simple pleasures in life, like, for example, visits to Costco. Why? Because I'm an aficionado of value, which admittedly, someone would have a hard time believing that that could coexist with an addiction to, say, Porsches. Why? Because things like keyless entry are optional on every single Porsche, even Porsches that cost like 200 grand. But change is a brewing. You see, Porsche, they've been watching our little twisted version of The Price is Right and how we bitch and moan about things like this costing extra. So now every Macan is going to have keyless entry fitted as standard. But they couldn't admit it was our little game that got them to do it. So they came up with a whole bunch of other changes to hide this change, which I think is a very nice gesture on their part. So I'm going to return the nice gesture with another nice gesture. Let's look at all the other changes that come along with the free keyless entry. Now, in order to better understand one of the more important changes, we need to continue along with the value and Costco themes, and in the Porsche Macan world, that would absolutely be the 4-cylinder flavor, and that more power, 261 horsepower. However, there's some good news and bad news to share with you. The bad news is I will not be able to tell you anything about it today because of the good news. We are driving the Macan S, which has more power and a bigger engine. This would be the 2.9 twin turbocharged V6, which we have sampled in a lot of other very practical Porsches. In this application, 375 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque. Now, yes, that engine should sound familiar to you because the last Macan we drove, which was a GTS, had the same engine. But they're still going to have a GTS for 2022, and that one is more horsepower, 434 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque. We will drive that in a separate episode. Now, being this is more of a performance-oriented SUV, do we really need to discuss fuel economy? I thought not. So let's press on to performance figures. And they're very respectable, again, considering what that engine has done in other cars. 4.4 seconds to 60 if it was a GTS 4.1. VMAX 160 miles an hour if it was a GTS 169 miles an hour. What, it's been about a year since you and I have been behind the wheel of a Macan, this one 4,350 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,973 kilograms with that Sport Plus mode. Oh yes, about 3,500 RPM, that thing comes alive. This engine, we already know, is unusually good. It works really well in the larger Cayenne, especially in the Panamera. But this, it's the old muscle car trick. Take maybe sort of the largest engine that one could fit into this thing and put it in a smaller vehicle. It's good. The power delivery is unusually good here because it's not lugging around an extra 500 pounds like in a Cayenne. Now, one huge thing I need to point out, the transmission is different. Yes, it's a PDK, but it's not the 8-speed that we've driven in the Panamera and Cayenne with this same engine. It's a 7-speed PDK, which is what we've experienced in previous Macans. Either way, the power delivery is good. It starts about 3,500, but more importantly, it winds out all the way up to about 6,500. Now, admittedly, you and I already kind of knew that about the Macan. We also kind of knew that this is more about driving dynamics. You know, when people ask me, hey man, which should I buy, that one or that one? And usually I have a very clear distinction. But when it comes to Cayennes and Macans, to me it's all about the size. One is not better than the other, and one is not cheaper than the other, as we will learn in a round of the options game with this specific vehicle. However, driving dynamics, that's what makes this thing shine. I almost like driving this better than the Cayenne. Yes, because of the size, but also with a lot of the chassis control options. Now, this one is fitted with the Air Ride, and from what I understand from the engineers at Porsche, the GTS will come fitted with the Air Ride suspension as standard. However, all Macans are now fitted with PASM as standard. That means adjustable dampers in the Porsche world. But the Air Ride, there's way more control over all planes of motion. There is virtually no pitch, squat, dive, and roll, which is hard even in a smaller SUV. This is one of the more rewarding SUVs to drive. Like, I could see myself dailying this thing with this setup with the Air Ride. So net in the driving dynamics department, what's different here? Well, from a hardware perspective, nothing. From a merchandising perspective, meaning how you go into like a grocery store and you see the end caps of stuff that are on sale, that's what's changed here. Meaning stuff that you and I used to have to write a check for and pay extra money, that now it's more cohesive setup package, even when one wants to be a cheapskate like me. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the Options Game with today's contestant, a Macan that doesn't necessarily fit in our theme of Costco and value. See, other Macans may, like the most basic Macan, can be had at $54,000. That's about the base price. This one, the base price ain't bad either. It's about $65,000, $65,400 to be exact for the 2022 Macan S. However, this one that's been flown over from Germany, serial ending number 23, this one has almost every single option with the exception of a sunroof. So let's dive right in. First option would be the Papaya Metallic, which we saw on that Sport Turismo SE Turbo Hybrid. Love this color, gotta see it in person to really understand it. And it is somewhat affordable at $700. However, the interior, which you may have seen throughout this episode, is black leather. Yes, it has contrast stitching, that is Papaya, but it is $5,850. The air suspension is $1,390, the Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus $1,500, and the Sport Chrono $1,220. Then we press on to the Sport Exhaust, $2,930. This one's been fitted with optional brakes, the Porsche Surface Coated brakes, $3,490. Once again, on a GTS, that would be fitted as standard. Then we press on to the 21-inch GT design wheels, built in $4,330. Then we have to go to the lane change assist, $390. Then the surround view monitor, optional on a $65,000 car, $1,200. Then the adaptive cruise control, also optional on a $65,000 car, $900. Then the 18-way sport seats, I'd say something I would want in a Macan, even the most basic Macan, $1,710. Then the GT Sport steering wheel, so a smaller diameter steering wheel, kind of what comes out of the 911, $1,190. Then, believe it or not, the Qi wireless charger, optional, $580. The Bose stereo, normally about $1,600 in a Porsche. This one is only $990. Now, if you were thinking, wow, that's a hell of a lot of options, you would be thinking wrong, because believe it or not, there are a whole nother bucket of options fitted to this specific vehicle. They all fall under the heading of Porsche exclusive manufacture. In this case, they're mainly trim options. Like, take a look at the car. It's got a lot of this black trim around it, including these blades on the lower part of the body. Then they've got some other, I would say, flash options, like, for example, the puddle lamp. I am a sucker for these things, but why is that optional on a $65,000 car? And then specifically with the Papaya Metallic, the clear tail lamps absolutely come off the page. Put all of that together, that's an additional $4,600. Then the only other thing is the destination handling von Deutschland for $1,350, which brings us to a total retail price of $103,600. So if you've been keeping score thus far, the changes, they really aren't in the hardware department. Yes, some things have been tweaked, but overall it's the same goodness we've come to know and love from Macans. What has changed, at least the aspects we can understand, are merchandising and aesthetics. And the biggest thing one would notice would be the nose of that vehicle. I personally am not offended by it, but then again, I didn't think it needed to change. You see, it is the best selling vehicle by a long margin in the Porsche world and has been for many years. So it kind of falls under the heading of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And one thing I'm very glad they did not change is the clamshell hood. To me, that's what separates this vehicle out, not just as like a crossover sport utility, because no other that I can think of has a clamshell hood, but more importantly, that is the one design detail that makes it really stand out from the vehicle on which it's based, which is the Audi Q5. Now, to go along with that, there are some color and trim changes. This papaya metallic was not on offer in previous Macans. There was some other colors that they're adding to it. I will say, very nice touch. Papaya metallic in the seat belts, vielen Dank. Then, it's not all puppy dogs and roses. Remember about a year ago, I said Porsche was working on a new Macan, and please, oh please, oh please, let's ditch the haptic feedback. Well, apparently they decided not to listen to me, and as expected, virtually the same center console from Cayenne, from the Panamera, now makes its way here. There are some changes in that, yes, I do have a real knob for volume. Thank you very much for that. I believe that's for tuning and adjusting the map and working with the infotainment system. But overall, not a fan here. So yes, excited that there are toggle switches for the major HVAC controls, meaning the fan speed and temperature, but you kind of need a knob. You kind of need other functions controlled by real buttons in order to make this safer. This is not a good solution in the long term, and may I suggest you take a step from the folks at Ingolstadt, your cousin. They kind of went backwards to real knobs and real buttons in one of their newer vehicles. Can we do the same thing here? Now, for those that are uninitiated into the preaching or really bitching about my disdain for haptic feedback in vehicles, perhaps a bit of a recap. Now, admittedly, voice is not a huge factor in the control of really important settings in this vehicle. Yeah, in an S-Class, but not this one. Like, for example, here we are on an aggressive road, and maybe I might want to change the suspension setting as I'm pushing through this declining radius turn. You do not want to take your eye off the road when you do that to fool with some haptic feedback screen or button. So, yeah, here's the deal. You and I started this episode with two themes. There was value and Costco memberships. But as we progressed throughout the episode, we kept on bumping up to the term merchandising. And there's a reason for that. That's really the change going on here. Because if someone twisted my arm and said, "You gotta tell me what's going on here," I'd say this is very much the same Macan you and I have come to know and love over the past couple of years. Yeah, it looks a little bit different on the outside and the inside, but overall, it's pretty much the same, which is to say a good thing, and brings us to the wish list. And here I'm gonna go in two disparate directions, because themes have been two throughout this entire episode. There is one, a bit of a change here. I'd love to see a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Why? Yes, more reliability, less moving parts, but also let's get some torque coming in from, say, under 1,000 RPM. That would be lovely. And then number two, a completely different direction. I know Porsche's already working on this, but the Taycan, especially the Cross Turismo, is so magnificent. Imagine it in a smaller package like this, perhaps lower, meaning not a crossover, not a sport utility vehicle, but like a small, sporty station wagon. Can we do something like that? And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I once again humbly request your help with the algorithm, which you may ask, what does that mean? And well, there's the like, and then there's the subscriptions, and then there's notifications. But of course, most importantly, it is sharing these episodes with your friends on all your socials, especially Reddit. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.